I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. Andrew Kuo, however, it should be known that, as usual, takes no days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you, man?
I feel great. I feel so good. It's hump day. I'm listening to music. The TV's on. What's to complain about? Life is okay.
Are we still in March? No. We have made it out of March. I will say, this last month felt like March 2. Death March.
No, that's good, man. I like how people on the internet are trying to shame other people into not participating in April Fool's jokes. And I'm like, no, bring the jokes on. We need the jokes so bad. It's like, it's not funny. I'm like, oh, it is not funny, but kind of very funny. Can someone own someone else in their house and videotape it and post it? Videotape.
The problem with April Fool's jokes is that it may be manifold, but one of them is that they're not funny. And two, I'm saying that the blowback against April Fools is not just Corona related. This has been brewing for years.
Yes.
Corona is a nice cherry on top for why you should shame people into not doing April Fool's tomfoolery. But this has been growing for a while. It's a bit like the hatred of SantaCon, where people to get, oh, I'm so tired of April Fools. The problem has been lack of funniness, but also co-opting via brands. And brands being like, today we're going to release this product or this viral video. And everyone's just expecting this outpouring of videos that you're not going to believe and goofy content because it's April 1st. It's the oversaturation. I don't think it's the fear of, I don't know, opening a door and a cup of water falls on your head.
I was not expecting this take, and it makes sense, but for me, it was just like watching people open cans of peanuts and springs coming out of them. Like,
that's the purest view of April Fools, and I love that you have that view. You're like a joy buzzer.
But this is like Vine and Instagram stories, right? Like, these are quick 20 seconds of like cats getting tricked into like going into a bathtub.
If only it had stayed that pure.
I am not aware of the dark side of April Fools, I have to admit.
It was the corporate takeover of April 1st that ruined the sanctity of a nice pie to the face.
Yeah.
A whoopee cushion, that farting noise as you sit down. The purity of that was compromised.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, that stuff is great. We love that. That's the spirit of April Fools. Not a clip put out by Hanes Underoos. No, it's about the whoopee cushion in your home.
I want someone to get kicked in the nuts, like the Draymond-esque scene. That makes everyone kind of chuckle.
That's not April Fools, though. Like April Fools, I just kicked you in the nuts.
I would be like, that's not April Fools, but kind of funny.
You're a real sick puppy.
I like people getting like tricked. The best trick I've ever seen was somebody. This was genius.
I'm still pondering your idea of fooling someone by like kneeing them in the balls. Like, joke's on you.
Well, sort of like a trap, like a mouse trap, right? Like having someone do something that they want to do unsuspectingly and having a punishment be like a cup of water or like getting a swift kick in the nuts.
It's not an April Fool's joke.
Not with that attitude. You're an April Fool's hater over here. The April Fool's cops have logged on. But the best trick of April
now
Fool's
you're
joke
lying
I've
on the
ever
ground,
seen.
clutching your genitals in extraordinary pain.
Are you
April Fools.
anti getting kicked in the nuts? Like that's the most universal funny thing.
But that's funny, but that's not a prank. getting kicked in the nuts is only funny if it's accidental. We know this from America's Funniest Home Videos. It's only funny if it's unintentional.
It is.
Kicking someone in the balls isn't a prank.
It's kind of. It could be the result of one. Also, you're a cop. I found this. You're a joke cop. But no. But this is the best trick I've ever seen.
Okay.
Someone buys a lottery ticket with the old winning numbers. So let's say Powerball has gone through. The numbers have been announced. No one wins. Whatever. Someone buys a lottery ticket with those winning numbers and video or records on any device the drawing of those numbers and gives a ticket to their friend. Be like, oh, I got you a lottery ticket for your birthday, whatever. And they sit down and watch it, and they play the recorded drawing of his numbers, and he thinks he's won the lotto. It's like the meanest, most amazing prank I have seen on the internet.
I don't like that.
How come?
Not a fan.
Whoop, whoop.
Nope. I'm a joke cop on that one. Not funny.
The guy took it. He was laughing so hard after he thought he won the lottery, but he was like, "That was incredible. That was incredible."
It's a good prank. I was walking through Brooklyn one time in a kind of industrial-ish area, and I saw like a film crew, on one side of the street, and I didn't really pay attention because if you're around like Williamsburg or Greenpoint, those areas, there's people filming all the time because there's studios everywhere. Like it's just something that you don't even pay attention to. And I started walking down the street, and this guy kind of comes up to me carrying like a tray with like 7 coffees on it. And he's like, hey, can you get this door for me? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So I like go and pull the handle on a door, and the door like falls off the wall, and there's just nothing behind it. And I see that guy like darting off, and then there's like the camera crew, and I'm like, was this a practical joke? You just got me? I was walking down the street, and I went to help you, and the door fell off, and then I just kind of I let the door fall and just sort of kept walking. And then they run over like, hey, will you sign a release? I was like, no, dude, go away. So I am a joke cop. It's true.
Now I'm getting to the bottom of your hatred.
They got me with
jokes.
the classic door falling off the wall trick in which you are neither surprised or embarrassed.
I wish you had just led with I got once, which you didn't even get got, but you tried to get got. That was frustrating.
I mean, I guess I got, but there wasn't really an upside in anything other than me watching the door fall and continuing to walk. I was like, huh.
It
was a
that's
bad
a
prank.
shame. I think the most famous celebrity prank, was the Justin Timberlake Ashton Kutcher thing, right? When he put boxes in his house, around his house, and be like, oh, everything's been seized by the IRS. You didn't know this, but like there's been like your accountant's been stealing from you or something. And he actually believed it, and he was like on the curb, like kind of almost in tears. That was the most famous celebrity prank, right?
They did good pranks though. They were funny.
Those were really good. I really like that show.
I was not a cop against those kind of pranks. I'm a cop against bad pranks.
Are they redoing that with that Chance the Rapper? Do I have that right?
I have no idea. None. I don't listen to Chance the Rapper.
He had some good tapes. I know his last album was not fun, man.
I don't know. I haven't listened to him since that first sort of mixtape that came out, which was totally cool.
Acid rap.
He's talented. I'm just not into his whole shebang.
He's got some great songs. Do you listen to Takeshi 6ix9ine?
Of course I do.
Streets. Did you hear the news that he could be? I mean, by the time you hear this pod, he may be out of jail, but we don't know. So we're recording it, and the feds have the power in their hands, but he could be logged on to the internet in a matter of hours. How do you feel about that?
Can he rekindle his love-hate relationship with Treyway?
Mm-hmm. How does he go about doing that, in your opinion?
I'm going to be honest. Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I think that relationship has been permanently damaged.
The ship has sailed?
On Treyway?
On the relationship?
I think it has.
That's fair. I mean, how do you think he's changed? Do you think how long has he been in jail? Like around a year?
I think today is the day that 6ix9ine becomes president. if you look at his demeanor, it was the day that he understood the gravity of the situation and became presidential.
You mean like American presidential or like Knicks presidential?
Just, presidential. Today was the day. All those other days when we thought he had turned presidential, today instead was the day that 6ix9ine, this incorrigible, self-interested narcissist, today was the day he became presidential. I'm glad he's out. He didn't really do anything.
Yeah, racketeering is such a vague thing. It was a bunch of guns, a bunch of drugs. He is not somebody I would feel comfortable around. Have you ever been in the same room as him?
I've been in the same room, but I have never interviewed him in a situation where it was just us. Yeah. I've been to. Actually, you might have been there. I don't think so though. He was at the opening ceremony fashion show with Nicki Minaj, maybe like a year ago.
I missed that one.
They seem to have gone together and were sitting together. I think it was at Le Poisson Rouge, maybe. I forget. Anyway, so I have been in the same room with him, but I have never hung out with him or his crew in the way of I used to when I would write stories about musicians.
Yeah, I think at a fashion show, it's cool. But if I was in like an area off the stage or maybe even like a club, I would just be like, yo, this guy's wild, just like, what's going to happen? And I wouldn't fear for my safety. I'd just be like, is something going to happen? Like, is someone going to throw a punch?
Well, yeah, I don't think there's a fear of 6ix9ine assaulting you or doing anything along those lines. I think there is the threat that something will pop off because
something
people
dramatic.
People are trying to kill him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he seems like he's involved in a world that he has a lot of activity.
Well, yeah, and I mean, looking back at artists that I wrote profiles on and spent time with, there are many occasions when you're just in a label's office or something, or you go to a studio. But at the same time, in some of those situations, things happen. If you were doing a story on, an artist who was in the studio when a shooting occurred, or you would have been there. It's not like there's a rule that when you go to do something, things won't happen.
Yeah.
But I've never felt unsafe ever.
Yeah.
And I think I was with Rick Ross when we were doing
he's
a story
very
on him.
nice guy.
I've
only
great.
met him once, but he's a very nice dude.
He was great, yeah. And I was with him, and we were going to these clubs around Chicago where they would go through and they'd collect some money for an appearance. And we were in VIP, and I was with him and his whole crew, and there was his own security plus the club security. And when we went in there, we kind of, by volume of the group that we were with, sort of pushed people out of VIP, and the vibes were not great.
Yeah, that's
it was people
tough.
who were at a club in Chicago who were in VIP who had been kind of forcibly removed so that Rick Ross could come in and hang out there with Larry Hoover's son and some Chicago sort of gangland luminaries. It was a little tension in the air, I will say that. And when we left, it was very much this kind of smushing convergence where security just mashed their way through the crowd. And I was almost kind of caught behind, and someone just saw me and was like, oh, wait, this guy's with us. And then that was kind of the only reason I was able to keep up with the group. And when we left, we kind of sped out into the tour van. It was hectic, but nothing actually happened. But I could see something occurring in that situation that you're totally not in control of, and is not even the rapper's fault.
Can I see your jerk store, where you exist on the jerk store spectrum? Let's say there's a long line to get into a club, but with a text you can circumvent that line and maybe go in, but everyone would see you do that. What do you usually do?
I go immediately to the front and go in. Come on.
Oh man, it's tough.
It's not tough. That's my job.
What if it's not your job? What if it's just to hang out? If you're not working.
Still my job. It's always my job. 90% of the time I'm not actually working.
Yeah.
But that's my job.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm halfway. If the line is like super long, it depends on how fast it's moving. If no one's getting in, then totally do your thing. But sometimes it's okay to wait a little while. But I've been to
I mean, yes, it depends on
many
the line
factors.
we're talking about. If we're talking about, so like if you're not that familiar with like cool guy New York parties,
drugstore spectrum.
you've got some that are like a regular club, right? Where it's a regular line. You're looking like, wow, that line goes halfway down the block. And that might be some sort of corporate event or like club that's got really good organization. But in a place that's very popular, generally people just mush the door and are yelling to the doorman or bouncers or whoever, or trying to text people, but they're right up front and kind of, it's a jostling type of thing. It's not a line at all.
You're just trying to wave yourself in.
Yeah, you're just trying to catch someone's eye who knows you or something. So those are two totally different things. Because in that situation, you're actually not budging the line. You're just trying to get up to the front and get someone's attention. And that's like 90% of like the kind of nightlife stuff I think most of us would go to anyway in that kind of spectrum of like not everyone can get in. Yeah. It's really like bum rush the door and like yell.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also depends on my behavior. Always depends on what's inside. If it's like if there's a performance that's gonna happen quickly, I turn into the worst version of myself. And be like, hey, can I just go? He's gonna be on stage in a second. But if it's nothing, I'm really pressed to see. If it's like just a really cool bar or hang, like I can wait.
But yeah, if there's like 7 or 8 people out front, I don't feel the need to like pull nightlife writer card. It's more like, as you were saying, it's like a line down the block. And you're like, I'm either going to go right in or I'm going to go home. I'm not here for an hour-long wait to try to get into something. Like, that's just not one of the variables.
Yeah. Well, this conversation is not awesome, but I was just wondering what your
I don't think that's jerk store.
are.
It's like, I mean, come on. I wrote about nightlife for 10 years. Like,
True.
like that's the one upside you get. Is generally being able to like get your way into a party. That's the key element that you get as a result. That's the perk.
My one most braggadocious moment was when I was doing a weekly at Avenue. And, I just showed up early. Usually there was no problem, high five the door guy, walk in, set up, get started. And this time there was a little crowd. The weather was nice. I think it was the spring. And the entire Kardashian posse was there. I mean, Kardashian family was there. And they weren't as famous yet. This was like as they were kind of hitting with their show. And they were all waiting to get in. And the door guy was a little, like overwhelmed because there was 15 people out there. And the family was half of them. And he saw me and was just like, you got to make room for the short Asian guy. And I rolled in with my bag of CDs. And they were like, what the hell? And I'm like, I just work here. I'm not cooler than you. But that was my most braggadocious moment. I was
That's
like,
pretty good.
They became very famous people.
I did not know you well then, but I used to go to that party sometimes and hang out with your co-DJ host and the guy who was running that party overall and drink some of the bottle of vodka that you guys kept stashed behind the DJ booth.
We were paid in a lot of drink tickets, and for the first few times we just like get bottles and put them in front so all of our homies like yourself could have whatever they wanted. But then towards the end we were like, oh, we could probably just sell these and make a little bit more money for a cab ride home or just like to pay your phone bill, So I would just like get these bottle tickets and ask someone next to me like, do you want this for like $80? And half the time they'd be like, yeah, that's a fine deal. And I would look to the waitress and be like, is this cool if I do this? And she's like, totally cool. Do whatever you have to do,
The parties at Avenue when you were upstairs, those were pretty cool. Downstairs was more of the club.
Yep.
And I remember going down there and seeing like Gallinari.
Yes.
It's that era, like Gallinari downstairs with like, I don't know, Ronnie Turioff or someone. It was that
definitely
that moment. Have you ever DJ'd like really like a popular club, where it was like going off?
Unfortunately, no, because I can confidently say I was a bad DJ. And
You still DJ though.
I kind of retired a little bit, but I'll do stuff for like Fashion Week and my friends and all that stuff. But I'm not a good DJ, and I don't really like turn the room out because either I'm too wedding and like Paul Simon centric, or like really weird mixtape centric where there's like DJ drama drops still in it. Like I didn't care about mixing. I got bored after like 3 songs in the same BPM. Like I was as salty as you can imagine. But I didn't. My dream was always to just lock in at Santos there was times where it would just be a dancing crowd and you just lock in and play your 45 minutes and then no one notices there's a change and you step out. That was like my favorite kind of DJ gig. That's like right before like dubstep became big. So it was just like this danceable electronic stuff. And that was really fun for me. I think that was my favorite era. Santos was popping for a second. I DJed with like Q-Tip there a couple times and some other really good DJs by accident.
That party was really good. The one with Vashti and Q-Tip. That party was...
that Friday party was insane.
It was a great party.
Yeah.
And then it became almost too popular. But when it first started and hit that like great sort of middle range, you'd have like Busta Rhymes on stage. I remember seeing Steve Nash there. It's all just basketball context. But it was like a very good party where it was cool and you knew a lot of the people, but also... these sort of notables were starting to like flood in, and it was like Ronson and Q-Tip and Kuo.
Right. One time I was up there during one of those parties, and I was wearing this like yellow. It was the era of like yellow, white tees.
Nick's shorts.
I think this is pre-Nick shorts, but maybe. But I certainly asked every rapper to sign my T-shirt when I was in the booth, and I wasn't. I was just hanging out. And I think I got Nas, Busta Rhymes, and Q-Tip on one T-shirt, which was pretty awesome.
That's a posse cut.
It was sweet. I mean,
Nas, Busta Rhymes, and Q-Tip.
Yeah.
I don't think they've all ever been on a song together. It might
can't
just be your
remember
shirt.
Yeah. I got Nas and Q-Tip, and then Busta was towards the end. I was like, I put out a Sharpie to him, and I was like, yo, can you sign my shirt? He was like, no, man, this is a club. I'm hanging. And then he looks at my shirt and sees Nas and Q-Tip. He's like, oh, I'm definitely going to get on this. And he was just like laughing.
He's infamously a jerk.
Oh, I disagree. Why?
I have never interacted with him. I've heard this from multiple people that they just dislike interacting with Busta Rhymes.
I was an intern getting no gruel at Elektra Records this summer. His album came out, Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Could See, that whole kind of his peak. It's an awesome song. So cool sounding still. He was such a good rapper back in the day. But he would come in a lot just to like approve visuals and stuff, and I would just kind of lurk in the corner. Dude would always give me a high five, give me a hug. Like I was like a 19-year-old dweeb, and he was so nice to me. So I have only good memories of him.
It's nice to hear some pushback on the propaganda that's being spread around Busta Rhymes being a dick.
That's right. I mean, it was just for like the month of August, when he had to be in.
Oh, he's nice during August, but the rest of the year.
Like, I don't know him outside of a professional environment is what I mean,
11 months of being a dick.
Well,
1 of being princely.
I'm just talking sample size here, Ben.
Sample size of 2. 1, he was kind of a dick.
yeah, right. Oh, 50. Yo, you'll take a 50% shooter. Enough bragging, though. We've been bragging too much.
Have we? Maybe that's what the show is now. Us just boasting about nightlife from 10 to 15 years ago.
About tertiary rappers.
I mean, look. Those are stories we got to share with the Cookies listeners. There's nothing else happening. We got to dig in the vaults. Talk about fleeing clubs with Rick Ross. Busta Rhymes, signing your forehead with a Sharpie.
My good memory of Rick Ross was after
Look who's back to boasting.
No. You said this was our new pod.
Okay, you're right.
We gave up the Monk season 2 pod. We got to do something.
Boasting.
Shalhoub turns into Ross in a heartbeat. But I met him after a performance he did at a Fader magazine party when they put him on the cover when he was coming out, and I think it was on the Frying Pan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So if people don't know anything about the Frying Pan, it's a former ship that is attached to the shore around Chelsea Piers, but it was really falling apart inside, and every minute in there was one that you were pretty sure you were getting tetanus.
Yeah.
Everything just seemed like it would poke you and make you break out. And then
Splinter season.
Yeah, it sucked. And it was incredibly hot inside too. One of my least favorite venues. Being on the deck area was kind of cool because you could be outside a little bit, but inside was just brutally awful.
Nothing but bottlenecks. Nothing but bottlenecks.
Oh, that and upstairs of the box, the two bottleneckiest bottlenecks. Anyway, go on.
But I think it was. Now I'm getting mixed up. It might have been a space adjacent to it with like a carnival canopy.
Come on.
I know. It was a long time ago, man. Some of our listeners may not have been born yet. That's not true. But he was nice. He stuck around and took photos and like did not budge, and everyone like got to meet him, and I thought it was really sweet. He was sweating a lot, like a Patrick Ewing-esque. He wanted the performance more, so he was exhausted. But I saw Lil Yachty. I was at a Lil Yachty record release on the Frying Pan, which I thought was really ironic and fun.
That's got to be more recent than I've heard of anyone being on the Frying Pan. But
Yeah,
maybe there's stuff. Maybe there's stuff going on the pan. If you
5
will.
years ago. Where's Lil Yachty now? He hasn't like stayed as relevant as. Remember he came out with Lil Uzi Vert, and we were kind of talking about them in the same breath.
Yeah, but Yachty was always just like a friend of the program. He was never a real rapper. He was just a cool guy who was around that whole crew when they were all sort of down with Yams and ASAP, and it was like Yachty and Cardi and
Playboy
Vert,
Cardi. Yeah.
and they were all just sort of crew, and
Yeah.
Yachty was a member of that group.
But it doesn't prevent someone from like Tyler not being able to rap amazingly. I mean, his success is pretty steady.
I mean, Yachty's put out some new stuff, and young people still are into him. I mean, I think people like him still, but yeah, he wasn't a talent in the way that those other guys are. Like Cardi is awesome, and Cardi makes great music, and so does Uzi, who's like a ridiculous savant.
Yeah, he's a genius.
Yachty was never that. Yachty was kind of likable.
I agree totally. So what I'm looking forward to with this 6ix9ine release, I hope, is kind of reclaiming the internet of what I thought it was maybe a month ago in more innocent times, because after this quarantine era, or as soon as this quarantine era started, we saw like an influx of like rap heads kind of take over my feed, at least, with like D-Nice and, you know, classic rap heads like Ellen DeGeneres, the Obama, the Zuck.
Zuck is here. It's a movie.
And I'm happy.
Know what's cool? $1 billion.
I want 6ix9ine to inject some manic energy back into our rap feeds, you know?
Yeah, I do not want him reappearing on the scene with Gen X tranquility.
No.
I want him back barking at the camera, wearing a Fendi face mask with his rainbow hair back. Yeah. I want the real 6ix9ine. I want him unapologetic about snitching. Yeah, I snitched. I'll do it again.
Right.
Tell me some information. I'll pass it along.
I dare you to tell me a secret. And
because you know what?
Tell someone
I'm going to go back to committing crimes after I have enough information to then get out of those crimes. I have a system and it works.
How safe can he be? He's going to be okay, right?
You know, I don't know. It goes back to that conversation we were just having. Yeah. There have been way too many rappers who have gotten killed and gotten involved in horrific violence for me to say anybody is safe. There are also cases like 50 Cent where people were taking bets on when he would be killed after he blew up with like his mixtape series, like 50 Cent is the future, and then Wankster, and people were like, oh, he's going to be dead by 2 months from now. Yeah. and 50 Cent ended up being fine. At the same time, there are too many guys who have died within the last year or so for us to say, oh, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
but
and it's not
it depends it depends on where he goes.
Yeah. And it's not a vibe. It's just like one person who decides to do something. You know, it's like the triple.
Oh, it's not the general public who's going to do something to him.
Or it's not the vibe of danger. It's just like one person, you know, who has a plan. But
well, I mean, he has real enemies.
No,
like
that's what I mean.
Actual
Yes.
enemies who will try to kill him if they get a chance. And it is like, I get what you mean. It's like one individual doing it. And it's like an NBA free agent. It only takes one team to pay.
All right.
And
It's
that's
like,
what you're suddenly worth.
yeah, all of these players are overpaid. I'm like, you mean one guy who got paid this summer? But have you caught wind of this Scott Storch T-Pain battle?
Is this an Instagram live beat battle? Is that what's happening?
I think so. And
Oh, the hell that D Nice hath wrought.
I know. And of course, there's nothing better to do than relitigate both their careers. Respect to both of them. I did not know both of them declared bankruptcy. I thought Scott Storch was always kind of rich, but he spent all of his money in LA, according to Wikipedia.
There was a long article about Scott Storch, and he more or less blamed his cocaine habit.
Yes, that's what it
for
says.
losing all his money while he was in Miami, I believe.
He said he would just get high and buy expensive cars he couldn't afford, and then forgot to return a Bentley, I think, and was charged with robbery. It sounds like a cocaine haze for sure.
Yeah, he at least blamed it on cocaine. It was probably a series of other things as well as using a bunch of drugs. But yeah. Storch had sort of I think a well chronicled fall from his heyday of the lean back era.
He's got some hits, man. He was involved in many hits.
Well, if we're talking about memory lane, one of the coolest things in New York, as far as, you know, during my time here, and this is a long time ago, was that it was called Black Lily, and the Roots threw a Sunday party at Wetlands, and they would have Scott Storch on the keys, Questlove playing drums, the rest of their band was there, and people like, I don't know, Jill Scott and Erykah Badu and Common and Black Thought and, you know, whoever was from the Roots, like, affiliated crew would just stop in and do a couple songs or do new stuff in front of a live band. And it was free, and it was like, you know, $4 Miller High Lifes at the bar or something. It's incredible. You just see all these really talented people as the sort of neo-soul movement was taking off. A lot of them were up from Philly. Like, Philly's Most Wanted would come and just do songs in front of Scott Storch and Questlove.
Have you ever seen
It was kind of
Razel?
amazing.
Have you ever seen Razel perform?
He was there.
Of course
All
he
of
was
them
there.
were. All of them were. And
Razel,
imagine
the
how good he'd be
beatboxing
right
maestro.
now at D Nice's party. Just
Where has
beatboxing in the
Razel
corner.
been? I didn't even want to Google Razel. I just want him to exist in this pristine memory in my mind.
Oh man, is that the lowest possible place we can get to, right? With like these like
Wikipedia
online battles is beatboxing battles.
Oh no. I mean, D Nice. The Obama are doing it. Well, why don't we?
Round
that's not-
one, Sasha Obama takes on Razel.
But that sounds like, I mean, at the time, totally, that was the thing, man. Like, I'm guessing this was like 2000, 2001.
Yeah, it was right in that exact era. And, you know, I went most weeks. It was something that you could do on a Sunday night that was like really cheap when you were young and broke. And you got to basically see a bunch of good rappers for free in a tiny little environment where you were 15 feet away from the stage playing live music. It's real sick.
Dude, what is the live music industry going to do now? Like, what's a Live Nation? I mean, Live Nation is like, whatever, that's a 1%. But what are all these promoters? We've talked about clubs endlessly and small venues that need our help and the government's help, 1,000%. But what is this industry that like gives us all these performances, like the handlers, the managers, the bookers?
I mean, what about venues?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that, so I kind of want to
Right,
talk
right.
about like the
Oh, that's true.
ecosystem. You know, like the venues need our help. ASAP,
Well, that
you know?
ecosystem is obviously shot in terms of show bookers. I mean, you could still do music management. You could still help someone in various ways, but
Sell
yeah,
songs
I mean,
to commercials.
right? You know, like
Yeah.
I guess yeah, it's all pretty dismal.
I'm kind
But
of
the,
goading you into a technology conversation, to be honest. Like,
Okay,
is,
just take it there.
is
No,
there
no Steve Nashing around with little dribbles like Allen Iverson. Let's go. Come on. What do you really want to ask me?
is there a virtual space for this? Does it work the same? Is Redaelli the same when you're in a virtual space? Why do you go out? Maybe that's the question.
I don't go to see live music anymore though, so
Right.
it's hard for me to say. That's just not something that has the same appeal that it once did. I'll go see a friend's band or something, just show support, and I like seeing my friends do things that they're good at. It's it gives you a
Or
new
bad at.
angle, or bad, but it gives you a new angle of looking at someone that is seeing them do something in a public space. I think that's cool.
What if our
But
crew?
I don't know.
What if our crew? I agree. For me, half of going to shows was seeing people I liked and wanted to be around. But what if our crew was like, instead of being like, let's get a low key drink here, or let's try this restaurant, we were like, yo, we're all going to the Redaelli show. Would you be like, all right, I'm into that. It's 2020. I'm going to see some beatboxing.
Right now, how I feel? Hell yes. Oh, I can get out of my house? I can go see one of the greatest beatboxers in rap history? What if Dougie Fresh shows?
Oh, yeah. What if
Will Charlie Tuna appear?
is some social networking boss gonna show up? Is Zuckerberg a boss? Is he only a boss? Maybe, but
Zuckerberg's a worker.
yeah, that's right. But the future of this thing, I think, will be fine. I hope, but I think will look different, right?
I don't know what the future will be like, and I do wonder how long it's going to take for us to be comfortable in a room full of a ton of people.
I know.
And so much of this is just based on how long this takes. If all of a sudden things are fine tomorrow, I think we'll go back to normalcy fairly soon.
I agree.
If we spend the next 2 years bouncing back and forth between lockdown, quasi-lockdown, okay, just sort of social distance a bit, no groups over 50, shit, lockdown again. I don't know.
How can you
It's
book
gonna
a
take
tour? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like those industries, it just doesn't work. You can't fill a stadium. The NBA is going to have to take a long look at virtual reality ideas. Okay, we can space out 1/10 of the people who would typically be in a stadium, but we've got to figure out a way to let people watch it on TV as if they're getting a game experience. Maybe that technology becomes the way that we watch sports in the future. And we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. Like, is this going to accelerate this disconnect that we have between real life and ourselves and this connective tissue of like the digital world? How does this affect it when we come out? Do we say, no more phones, man? We're just going to hang with my friends and no phones, and we're going to hang out and like make physical contact and drink and have sex, and everything is going to be tactile? Or is it the other direction where we're just like, I watch all sports and all shows and everything I do is based on the phone or my computer?
I think the answer is definitely in the middle somewhere. What I've noticed, and I may just be projecting this, but I'm trying to like pay attention to the people who are really thriving during these last few weeks. And to me, I mean, we joke about it, but these producers and these people who kind of are one tier behind the scenes, of a performer. And
Well, who is thriving right now?
like, for example, music producers are able to create kind of like a discussion with content. And however we joke about it with Scott Storch and T-Pain and D-Nice, like they're doing something that we really love, and they're kind of like they are in this place. Like when you ask these producers what they do, it's like I just stare at my computer and like think of beats. So this is like right in my wheelhouse, you know, being able to connect with people in that regard. And this is like a nebulous idea or feeling I've been having, but in industries where people are like the producers or thinkers of the thing moving forward this is when we really need them. And the concert promoters, you know, is there a way? Justin Bieber just canceled his North American tour, and is there a way in the next 3 years for a Justin Bieber level act to give us something we want to pay $20 for? And I think that involves Bieber for sure as the tip of that spear, but what thinking goes behind creating something new that can sustain this industry?
You know, the silver bullet feels like virtual reality.
I'm looking forward
to that. Seems to be the way that you could confront the lack of IRL availability, is to approximate it. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like being there. It's like having a good seat. You can look around. You can go with your friends. It's sort of like it. It's not the same as just watching on TV like every other person, you know, via a camera.
And the model could work.
It's your own sort of experience within that. You can yell and you can hear your own voice in the crowd. I don't know.
And if
that
it
just
only
seems
costs,
to be the solution, right?
If it only costs $15 to $100, and you can sell infinite tickets, that might work. You know, because like MSG has a finite number of tickets, it sells out. What if this thing never sells out? Or what if you put a cap on it? You know, this is all virtual thinking, but I would assume the people who will survive in the music industry, in the touring music industry, have already been grappling with this for years. And this virus puts it into our immediate minds, but I think there's people out there who have already set this in motion, right?
I think so. You know, we talked about this before, but the NBA is trying to get into the virtual reality space. Mm-hmm. It's clearly something on the horizon where the availability of watching games, as you said, from one seat, but 1 million people can rent that seat.
Yeah, that's a good model.
It's an incredible thing that you can monetize in a way that goes far beyond selling that seat to one person who's willing to pay $20,000 a year for it, mm-hmm. or more. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a front row seat, and you can say, okay, we're going to sell this one for everyone who wants to watch the game for $25. You can sit front row seat. We're going to move one back to a different area that's going to be, you know, that's $10. You can watch it from there. Or you can buy season tickets mm-hmm. for that seat or for a seat. And that just seems to be an incredible resource for making money.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be restricted to simulating a seat in an arena. What if it's like the 5 of you can buy a virtual box? Not only can you jettison yourself with a first-person point of view to your seats, but we offer other things. Like, do you want to hang out with your man Charles Oakley? You know, would you like to have a concierge service where you get to do a Q&A with John Starks, who's available from 8 to 8:15 p.m. You know, like there's all these different add-ons that you can put on that might be really fun, and it will seem less creepy as a monetization thing and be something fans actually want.
Let's do it. Let's set it up. That's the future of cookies. For a bonus, you can sit next to Andrew Kuo and Charles Oakley. I would pay for that.
I mean, isn't this like a month away where we like are on some Instagram live thing and be like, hey, if you want to join, just sign in, and me and Ben will be sitting there for an hour.
I can't wait. It's going to be super engrossing for everyone. So in terms of basketball, we know about the Chicago Bulls documentary that's coming out, but there was another sort of mainstream media basketball show, and it's called The Scheme. And it's about the whole industry behind college players and talent scouts from AAU teams, money being funneled to family members. And it's an HBO show. And they specifically talk about a young guy who was busted and is now a felon for his involvement in routing high school players to college programs in return for money. And he was a 20-something-year-old kid from Saginaw, Michigan. What did you think of that show?
I thought it was well done, and I'm so thirsty for just like production value at this point because I've seen so much, and I was so excited to see a basketball-related documentary on HBO. It wasn't quite enlightening. I wanted to know about this guy, Christian Dawkins, who we know was punished for paying DeAndre Ayton in Arizona, and that whole scandal about boosting college athletes. And it took the turn that you would predict about. It had a legit form of whataboutism. Like, this guy got convicted and, as you said, is a felon for doing something that the NCAA has been complicit in for generations. And if we're going to spend all these resources on taking down this guy, and it's called the scheme because they planted FBI agents around him. They started like these fake companies to trick him into committing these crimes that he didn't even want to commit. And he was a young man who was kind of green, but also had ambition in his mind. So they targeted him as like an easy scapegoat to take down. And they set him up, basically.
Yeah. He was an interesting character in that he was certainly someone who was trying to succeed in the way that other people succeed. And the way, what I mean is that we know these colleges succeed and make money. We know that the players go to the pros and make money. We know agents are involved in this and make money. And he was kind of trying to figure out a lane where he could also benefit from this existing system. But he was doing it in a different way. And I do feel bad for him, and I respect him as a hustler. I do think those clips when they play back audio recordings when he was being surveilled, and man, he is annoying.
He's a young man who
I know
has a lot of ambition. Yeah, and that is inherently annoying.
I get it, and I was very sympathetic towards him when he's introduced, early on as this is the focal point and he's telling his story. But man, those phone calls, I'm like, this guy is so obnoxious. And it was just that same way that you would guess of like the sort of up and coming young hustler who's just there like, oh man, yeah, I was talking to Rick Pitino. It's much like me and Kuo were talking about rappers from 12 years ago.
That's right.
Virtually
20 years ago. Yeah. Nice. Right. It's like, what are the influences of this industry upon an impressionable young man versus like our interpretation of it? Like the agent in He Got Game or Jerry Maguire, is he just like, oh, I have the gift of the gab. Like I can just like talk my way into a deal. I'm a businessman, not a businessman, like stuff like that. And he kind of embodied this ambition as someone who saw an opportunity and really wanted to inject himself. He is not sympathetic here. And
he was good at this stuff. He was selling
pretty good.
scouting reports to colleges when he was like 12, 13 years old.
Yes.
And talking about middle schoolers in Michigan. And he was making money at that age, and he was inserting himself in as like a top prospect.
There's details here that are more interesting than the overall story. Not only was he inserting himself into these scouting reports that he was selling, he was making himself taller and better. Like he was just lying about his height.
He put himself number one.
Awesome. That is such a cool idea. And I love people who are obsessed about things, and he was obsessed with scouting these ballers, and I believe his brother was a really great baller who passed away early of an enlarged heart. But I love watching people in documentaries who have this kind of drive. It's really interesting no matter what, whether it be Joe Exotic. And, Joe Exotic's downfall was he lost his love for cats, big cats. And that's when everything maybe went south. And I think that's an interesting thing about the scheme is it changed from him loving scouting to loving money, which isn't a bad thing. Like he wanted monetary success because he saw an opportunity in something he loved. It's
also the idea that he's complicated, and he can sit here and say, why are white businessmen, white coaches, white scouts, white agents coming into my community in a sport that's populated by my peers and making all this money off of it. Why shouldn't I be able to do that? I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who can identify with these guys. I'm the one who is most sympathetic to them. Like, why should it be them and not me? Which is 100% true. But on the other hand, he wasn't an honest guy either. He wasn't someone who had only good intentions. He was out for himself as well. He ran up, what, $50,000 on someone's like credit card and Uber rides? Oh, an oversight, if you will. You know,
but that was an oversight. That was just a young man who wasn't paying attention.
Maybe.
Because there was no upside to it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe. But there were enough things over the course of this doc when you see, you're like, this guy was all about just doing his thing. He didn't care if it was legal. And that's okay. But that's what I mean by this dynamic, right? He can say, like, look, I am morally justified in being able to go and do the same thing in the way that these old white dudes are. But the end justifies the means.
And halfway through the doc, it kind of changes into an indictment of the NCAA, which I'm really about. Definitely.
To be clear.
Yes, and it is the same story we've seen over and over, but the story should be told over and over until they do something about it. But it kind of follows a little bit of the money that goes into the tournament and a successful program. And, you know, like the guy was made to take the fall, sort of like Shine or Abacus Bank, you know, where there's like something else happening and we just choose one thing to focus on. And
it's when you brought up like the financial crisis and the only people who get targeted by the government is a bank in Chinatown.
Yeah. I saw them eating dumplings. I think I told this story. I saw name dropping episode, but celebrity watching episode, but I saw them eating dumplings at Dim Sum Go-Go, which is underrated. Terrible name, good food. And they were having just a lunch meeting. I looked over, I'm like, those are damn celebrities, man. These guys, like, they give loans to non-English speaking Chinatown immigrants to kind of like stabilize Chinatown. And they were a subject of that documentary, and they were the only bank that was being taken down for the financial crisis, which was odd.
So I do see the comparison here. And when I said I find that guy obnoxious and that he was dishonest, I also don't view him as the villain here either.
No, he's not.
No.
He's just a kid with ambition, an annoying kid with ambition, but what 21-year-old with connections isn't, right? And,
exactly.
And the NCAA is very frustrating because all we have to do is change it and everyone's cool with everybody. You know, like we've talked about
the NCAA is the bad guy.
Of course. And yeah,
we know this. That's not what you tune into Cookies Hoops to learn. We all know this.
We all know this. And the players are not this kid had, well, he's an adult now, but he had a great quote towards the end where he was like, the coaches that went down for paying their players were good people. The coaches who don't pay their players are bad people. He's
Facts.
like, get that right. You know, like
True.
The coach
True.
of Arizona is a good person, which I thought was a great take.
Everything that's wrong with college basketball can be summed up by the lionization
Of Coach
K.
Yeah,
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Everything that's rotten to its very core
Checks out.
about college basketball, it's Duke. That's it. Look at it. Everything about it. That is the worst. Kentucky, virtuous.
Yeah. Rick Pitino, virtuous.
I mean, like for real though.
Yeah.
Pay off your players. Cool. Tell them they can play 1 year for you, and then they're out of here and they're going to the lottery. Cool. Do that.
When that Penny Hardaway story came out about Weissman this year, I was like, are you serious? We're still doing this? Like, yeah, I moved him closer to the school when he was in high school. I'm Penny Hardaway and I'm his coach. His mom was cool with this. Like,
It feels so cartoonishly archaic at this point.
is it just going to like age out? I mean, I want everyone to live forever, but is it just going to age out? And when the people in power kind of give up that power? Or are we just going to be like, yeah, let's pay these kids?
Isn't this what everything feels like now? That
It does.
this sort of this normalcy that we've had, this facade, is now just like, fuck off, man. Like
Yeah,
that whole
it's-
shit we've been doing, this whole
Tax rate,
lattice work,
healthcare, yeah.
all this stuff, this everything. Like, nah. We're done with that. This alternate side parking. I mean, we are done with it.
nice parties.
That's what we're doing now.
Unfortunately and fortunately, to each their own.
So, other NBA stuff. When people are chattering in this dead zone of a time about players of yesteryear, as we've mentioned, I don't like to get into it.
No.
I like to steer clear. Stay away. Keep my distance. But there's one thing I can't abide, man. There's one thing. The BBM.
The
Excuse me.
the BMM.
The BMM. You can denigrate Ben Simmons all you like.
Can they?
Sure.
Can they?
Go for it.
Really?
Go for
Okay.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Do your thing.
Done.
You can try to drive a wedge between the Sixers' young superstars. I get it. I get it. They're a threat. Why not? You can try to get Brett Brown fired. Whatever you want. Whatever.
Yeah.
No Allen Iverson erasure. Not on my watch.
Go off, King.
So, some journalist that I respect, very much so, suggested that Steve Nash was better than Allen Iverson. Andrew Kuo, is this an April Fool's joke? Is this a gag, a hoax, a bit?
I want to be like, yes, maybe Nash is, and I went to just see the raw numbers, and no, Nash was a really great player. I love Steve Nash. Allen Iverson is the logo, man. The proof is in the pudding. He's right there. He is one of the greatest players of all time, but clearly better than Steve Nash.
I mean, look, I love to watch whiteness work.
Let's call it what it is. Really, whiteness, do your thing.
The idea that Steve Nash is better than Allen Iverson is an affront. It is like,
Does not work.
it is the calcification of everything we dislike about looking at sports. Looking at sheer numbers instead of caring about games and like how people were. It's just numbers. It's like efficiency dorkery. It's decontextualization of everything. And that's why it's a bummer, right? Allen Iverson is like a top 15 basketball player of all time. Mm-hmm. If you want to put someone like Duncan ahead of him, a two-way monster who's won a bunch of chips,
For sure.
go for it.
I like
man.
Duncan. Yeah.
Go for it. You want to put Kobe ahead of him? Absolutely,
sure.
man.
Sure.
Sure. I get it. But when you start talking about someone like Steve Nash and you don't have a litany of rings that you can just throw in my face, you have 4 seasons at the beginning of his career where he averaged 7 points a game. No, man. Get out of here. No. He was the best player on his own team for like 4 years in his entire career. He wasn't better than Finley. He wasn't better than Dirk.
He was meteoric with D'Antoni. That was a wonderful Steve Nash. That was awesome. But those were only a portion of his career.
Nash started out, came out of the same draft as Iverson, went 15th. He was not a nobody. He was a 4-year college player, hit an iconic shot for Santa Clara in the tournament. Went 15th in the draft. Spent 4 years averaging 7.7 points a game or something.
Yeah.
He was a nobody. He was putting up Chris Duhon numbers.
Shout out to Chris Duhon.
Legend. He had the profile of a passing 3-and-D wing. He's putting up Bruce Bowen stats.
In preparation for this discussion and just because we're doing a pod and there has to be some sort of debate. Me and you love passing. Steve Nash, kind of a basketball genius. But it goes to the point. He's awesome. I am not denigrating Steve Nash. He's super fucking good.
Steve Nash is a basketball genius.
Yeah, dude, he's a wizard, and I would take him on my team any day. But Allen Iverson is a superior player.
It's not even close. Like,
Not really, yeah.
I mean, he literally averaged 3 to 4 times as much as Nash was scoring at the same point in their careers.
Yeah. Different roles, and I just want to pump up Steve Nash a little bit. He had seasons where he was averaging, maybe I'm looking at 7 seasons over 10 assists a game. That's remarkable. He is, I don't need to disparage Nasty Nash, but Iverson is just on a different tier.
That's all I'm saying. Nash was great.
Yeah.
But you don't even have the arguments that people typically can make against Allen Iverson when you're supporting Steve Nash. You can't say, but he won a ring. Didn't win a ring. Didn't go as far as Allen Iverson did. Never carried a team by himself to the finals. Didn't do it. The only arguments for Nash are that his teams had good offense.
Yeah.
Look, Steve Nash is awesome. He was a great player. He also benefited more from a system than any player in NBA history, or at least modern history. It's a joke. You look at his numbers just explode when he got first at the tail end of his time in Dallas, when they had Don Nelson and they started sprinting and running and shooting lots of threes. Then Jerry Colangelo was in charge of rule changing and then acquired Steve Nash right before they changed rules.
Right.
It was insider trading. He knew that Nash would be the captain of this up-tempo team when they were shifting the NBA offensive rules. So anyway, they bring in Nash under D'Antoni, and he morphs into a superstar. Really great player. But the idea that you couldn't have put Allen Iverson into that role and he wouldn't have looked like James Harden, that he wouldn't have scored 30 points a game and averaged 11 assists and been a better defender and led the league in steals, like, that's just a joke to me.
That mind exercise is true and isn't even necessary because even under Larry Brown, Iverson was better. Even after all of that, Iverson was still better. I think a better debate for the BMM would be Jason Kidd or Steve Nash. Like, we could have
That's
that
fair.
discussion.
I just think there's something about the way that Iverson was misused by Larry Brown and then the rise of analytics nerds, of which I include ourselves, but who have been targeted on efficiency. So when I tweeted about Allen Iverson today, people, efficiency. He wasn't efficient. Dude, this was 2002. Yeah. The only people who were efficient were guys like Nash, guys like Dirk, guys like Michael Redd, because they were just out-of-era shooters. Nash's greatness is based 100% on having a skill set that was an outlier at the time and being in a system that was 10 years ahead of the curve.
Right.
He was a great player, but he was a nobody for 4 seasons. And all of a sudden, when he gets down with high-paced teams that shot a lot of threes, and then D'Antoni, all of a sudden he turns into a god. Look, great player, not comparable.
I agree. And I think it's ironic because in one of the BMM Bibles, it says this book is about race, and we can never not think about race when we talk about players and when we compare players. It's race, race, race. America is about this. And I agree. So when you have this discussion, I'm always like, well, the numbers are the numbers. Iverson's better. But what are we really talking about here? Are we trying to subconsciously erase Allen Iverson from the stature which he kind of belongs in,
Absolutely. And I don't think people are intentionally doing it. It's
No.
what we were saying though, right? It's distance. It's people forgetting
Yes.
his impact on the game, and then the rise of stats and threes. Well, and we can look and say, well, he wasn't that great of a 3-point shooter, so he would have struggled today. His 3-point shooting career number is the same as Luka Doncic's, so whatever. But that doesn't even whatever.
Right.
Allen Iverson was a fine shooter,
Yes.
all things considered.
Yeah.
But it's also looking back and saying, Well, if his true shooting percentage was slightly over 5 and Steve Nash's was 60, then Nash is the better offensive player. And it's like, that's just not true. You're decontextualizing everything.
Right. And as a correction, analytics nerds have come back to volume a little bit, being like, well, there's definite value in volume. You know, we had to go far out into the place of saying, like, we have to be critical of missed shots, but we've boomeranged back a little bit and be like, well, depending on era, depending on what kind of a role you're playing on your team, like volume shooters are more important than we thought a few years back.
Well, a big part of it is this trying to compare not only the numbers of guys from the past, but in a sport that has shifted so rapidly. Mm-hmm. You know, Iverson with a Larry Brown prehistoric offense playing aside 4 non-shooters.
Wild.
Non-shooters in the starting lineup. Not one of those players could shoot. Not one.
It was a desert and Aaron McKee was the water.
And he didn't even start.
Yeah.
Allen Iverson was the best 3-point shooter on the Sixers.
Yeah. Ooh.
So you take that team out of the starting guys. I mean, Kukoc could shoot. But Allen Iverson was a better shooter than Aaron McKee. But you take that group and you compare them to 7 seconds or less. Like, you can't even do that and say, well, he was able to, you know, have more assists and he was more efficient. Like, that doesn't work. And we've been doing this for a while, defending the Jerry Stackhouses and defending the Tracy McGrady's and, God forbid, the Kobe Bryants. The volume scorers of the early 2000s are unfairly maligned by efficiency dorks. They played in a different sport.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Ben Falk from Cleaning the Glass kind of says it best on his website, where it's like, you have to forgive these numbers being dragged from volume. People who take more shots are going to suffer some sort of flattening of a curve of their numbers that players like Mitchell Robinson won't. But take that into account when you read these stats. It's important. And I agree.
Of course. And, you know, Nash was efficient because he was outlier. He could shoot, and most guys couldn't at that point.
Awesome player. One of my favorites for sure.
Oh, straight up baller, man. Yeah. He was a great player.
Yeah.
And I view him in some ways the same as I view Steph Curry. He was an awesome player who was the beneficiary of changing times. And in Nash's case, it was of a system that was basically a time warp.
Yeah.
It was playing 2017 basketball in 2006. Yeah. He had an incredible built-in advantage. It was like he was playing with a game genie.
Yeah. And let's not forget that
he had every issue of Nintendo Power.
So did I. I love that magazine. Loved it. But and let's not forget that, or let's consider that maybe this is political too, because Nash is such a successful, easy social media guy, and when stuff happens, Nash says something and we pay attention. It's very bright and sunny. Like, he's got pictures of his family. He does, like, right around the corner, he does like a charity football thing every year that gets a lot of press. Like, he's a very marketable guy for the NBA post career. And Iverson is more quiet, and you know, the most memorable moment we have of him is him hugging Dwayne Wade after Kobe's death, right? Which was heartbreaking, but Iverson hasn't been on the pedestal. They tried him out in the Big Three, and he kind of like didn't really follow through on that. He's more mercurial than Steve Nash is, who is very easy to consume as a celebrity. And he stays in our brain in a certain way that Iverson doesn't. So it's just like a weird subjective revision of their careers that's happening right now with the BMM.
What I don't like about the way that Allen Iverson is increasingly being perceived is that he was a vibes guy. That he was a cultural figure. He was important for the intersection of rap music and basketball and sort of the streets, and, you know, an element that was dangerous at the time, but now we have embraced, and tattoos and arm sleeves. And all that is true. He was that guy. He created the dress code. That was Allen Iverson.
Yep.
You know, he's the reason they put in a zone.
Yeah, yes, he is.
They got rid of his carrying. Like, Allen Iverson was targeted by the league. And Steve Nash, of course, was acquired by the guy who was changing the rules.
They killed his album. Didn't Stern crush his album?
Probably. I mean,
I think that was a thing.
Saying some pretty gnarly stuff on 40 bars.
Yeah, maybe a good idea in hindsight, but
Kind of a hot track.
the streets, they say it's too hot for the streets.
Not a bad record. Yeah, some of those AI songs are just so violent. You're like, I don't know how Pat Crotchy, the pirate with the red beard, is gonna market this song about, wrapping bodies up in saran wrap or something, whatever.
I know,
but
they don't get the culture, man.
But what I was saying was, I am worried that Allen Iverson's role as a cultural ambassador and a cultural icon is making us forget that he was the baddest man on the planet. No one was better at basketball than Allen Iverson. Shaq. Sure, Shaq was a better player, not better at basketball than Allen Iverson. He was outrageous, fully unguardable, brilliant passer, led the league in steals. He was a magician. Like, take Kyrie, but make him 200 miles an hour and scary.
And you know how some vets these days kind of side-eye Giannis and Shaq and Charles Barkley? They kind of take their shots at him. But what I love about Iverson and what I loved about him when he played was he had a bit of that mellow thing to him where everyone around him, his peers, were just like, utmost respect to this guy. Like, Kobe would talk smack to everybody, and Kobe really loved Iverson. All the greats loved Iverson. And I thought that was a really cool thing to see because he was a target for the NBA and criticism from the media. But when you're on the court, everybody on the court was like, yo, Allen Iverson is bad, man. Respect,
As Bill Simmons said in his book, that Allen Iverson, or he said it in a page 2 column, I forget, but he said Allen Iverson was the most menacing player of the decade.
So awesome.
People don't understand this.
Yeah.
They think he was this little scrappy guy who had a lot of heart and ran around cupping his ear and, dressed like a rapper and was influential with neck tattoos. No, man. No. He was scary. He was the murderer. He was my favorite player because he was so badass. When Sprewell was on Golden State and they went to play the Sixers, he made everyone on their team check their laces and went through and inspected them to make sure that they were laced up properly, because otherwise they were going to break their ankles.
So what makes a writer or a basketball thinker say that and then in 2020 say, well, Steve Nash might be better?
I just think it's I think it's the rise of stats and metrics and just the shifting of perception. And time goes by, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same reason that we hold Kobe so different from T-Mac. Time goes by. Mm-hmm. If Allen Iverson had been on a Sixers team that lucked into getting Tim Duncan and won 4 championships, the conversation would be so different. Iverson doesn't have any specific peak other than Game 1 against the Lakers stepping over Tyronn Lue. And thank God he has that. For real.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank God he has that moment, because otherwise people might have forgotten about him even more.
I agree. And I do think it's about what players do after the fact. On my TV right now with the sound off, I'm watching Stephon Marbury talk to Anderson Cooper. And just give it a few days or hours before someone says was Marbury actually really good or really bad? It just comes back into your zeitgeist. And I think Nash has done a really good job of that. And Iverson doesn't have that a part of his repertoire, of being a generous social media guy. And that affects perception, man.
Iverson is also viewed as a guy who has not escaped his era. He still dresses the same. He still kind of acts the same.
God bless him.
He still has a plastic cup. He's still drinking a little too much brandy or Hennessy, whatever his drink of choice would be when he's on TV at Sixers games. He seems trapped in amber
but he's still
Allen
part
Iverson.
of the ecosystem. He shows up to games and he's
but
present.
he's viewed as a franchise figurehead from the past, and he is beloved. And he, to your point earlier, never shows any animosity towards young guys. He gives them so much respect. We'll say, oh, Kyrie, Chris Paul, whoever, like Trae Young, their handle is so evolved since my own, etc.
He has that Jamal Crawford thing to him where he just loves the NBA,
Yeah. And I do think because of that, we view him as a product of his era versus someone who was fucked by his era and fucked by his coach.
Right.
And I believe that 100%. And it's not just because I love Allen Iverson. It's because it is obvious that if you took a guy who could lead the league in getting to the free throw line, who is the fastest player arguably in NBA history outside of like long stride Goliaths.
Leandro Barbosa?
Iverson was so fast. He was just crazy.
He was.
That kind of speed, that kind of wingspan, that kind of finishing ability, that kind of passing.
Great footwork, like economical footwork.
I mean, I posted a clip of him passing. It's obscene.
Yeah,
his passes are outrageous.
Yeah.
And in our mind, he's just kind of turned into like Monte Ellis, some inefficient chucker. That's just not true.
Shout out to Monte Ellis.
Like Iverson was a futuristic player who Larry Brown took off the ball and put on the wing and made him do little cuts into the paint that were packed with people.
Yeah.
He was screwed by Larry Brown in a way that like is intolerable today. Not only was he sabotaged on the court, Larry Brown like infantilized him and then took all the credit as like the one who brought Iverson to heel. Fuck Larry Brown.
Knicks coaching legend. I think a lot of it is like I love this idea of the eye test beyond the basketball game, but beyond a game, because he had kind of an awkward end to his career where he got a Les Paul guitar when he got the key to the city in Memphis, and he was a Big Three founding player, member, coach, and didn't show up, and he kind of had a bumpy exit scene, and I think we remember that more than we think, or maybe I remember that more than we think, and it doesn't help remember the great moments that he had, which were for a long time.
Iverson did not get a victory tour.
No.
He came back and spent some time on the Sixers after he was washed up, and that was kind of his farewell.
Yeah.
Did not get a victory tour.
And not to be too wistful about it, but the sadness of that Kobe moment where he's hugging Dwayne Wade, who got a great victory tour. Obviously, the melancholy bleeds into Iverson's own career, and I think he was kind of weeping for himself a little bit,
Maybe so. I also think, when we're talking about his exit from the league, Denver traded him for not much to the Pistons, or they traded him for Billups to the Pistons. Didn't work out well in Detroit. Then he went to Memphis, played a handful of games, was cut loose. And the story was that, he didn't want to come off the bench, that he still thought he was a superstar. That may have been the case. But Iverson did not age that gracefully, although he was extremely good in 2008 in Denver. He was third in the league in scoring.
One of his best seasons, right?
9th in the league in assists, 7th or 8th in the league in steals. Had one of his career high true shooting percentages, shot like 35% from three. He was really, really good and was more or less out of the league within 2.5 seasons. So it was kind of surreal. But maybe if he didn't lead the league in minutes, 7 of his first 12 seasons in the NBA, averaging something like 40 plus minutes a game, like maybe he would have had a more graceful exit from the league.
It's hard to tell, right? Like, maybe he just pulled the plug early. I don't know. That never really kind of works out, retiring early, but he tried to play for a long time.
Well, what I mean is we view him as someone who did not have longevity. Career-wise, he played about the same amount of minutes as Nash. Even though Nash played until he was, 40-something?
Yo, Iverson led the league in minutes 7 times.
It was crazy how much he played.
It's crazy how they didn't surround him with any more help.
That's insane, too. He averaged almost 44 minutes one game. I'm sorry, one season.
His career average is 41.
Sorry, insane. Anyway.
Shout out to Allen Iverson. No besmirching. Yeah, the logo.
We are not here for Allen Iverson erasure.
No.
Everything else is on the table. That's fine. Not AI.
Not our guy. Not our guy.
Try again, you mighty, mighty boss tones. So what else is new? What else is happening in the basketball world?
I've been thinking a lot about the Brooklyn Nets, man.
What are they doing?
Aside from indulging in solitary bottomless mimosas and French toast, and
Do they have a coach?
not yet.
Who is their coach?
I don't. Yeah, right. If the season started in 2 weeks, who would be their coach if they didn't hire
It's
somebody?
whoever was just inserting DeAndre Jordan into the starting lineup.
Right.
Whoever's doing that is the coach.
Oh, I forgot who that was. But they want Ty Lue, right? And Windhorst, Brian Windhorst from ESPN said this week that management is looking, the front office is looking for a big three. So they're looking for a bona fide star to play alongside Kyrie and Durant.
It's Jacques Vaughn. Okay.
Oh, Kansas legend? Jayhawk
One
legend?
and the same.
Wow. Shout out to Jacques Vaughn.
A short man.
But a very young-looking man. I remember him aging well in a way that I couldn't even believe he wasn't 21 still.
Yeah, that's true. He's only 45, but he has aged gracefully, unlike Allen Iverson. Another short man.
Hey, we're not taking shots at Iverson, remember?
No, not on my watch.
But so if they're gonna, there's a lot of palace intrigue in Brooklyn, because not only do we have a coaching situation, we have a roster, a foundational issue moving forward. If they want to use their two superstars in their primes to the best of their abilities or their potential, right? Karis LeVert doesn't quite do it.
Well, this has always been the plan of teams like the Sixers and the Nets, who have amassed solid but not great talent on good contracts. The end game is always to package them for a star. Mm-hmm. They're really good to have, but you can't have a whole team of them, mm-hmm. because then you're not using your cap space correctly.
Right.
And eventually those guys start getting paid more. So the Nets do have a nice collection of guys that you conceivably could package together. Most, notably are Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert. They both have very reasonable contracts. Mm-hmm. Our young players are both pretty good.
LeVert's making a little bit, 16, 17, 18. That's not nothing.
No, you're right. That was a little more than I thought. I know Dinwiddie does not make much in
10,
comparison.
9, and 9.
Yeah. That's a great contract.
Yeah. Oh, no, my bad. That's DeAndre. 11 and 12.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
And then they've got a few other pieces with a little bit of talent, like Kurucs and Jared Allen. Some other guys that you could bundle together. But I don't really know who's out there.
That's a good question. These guys are all very desirable players, in my opinion. Even Karis LeVert, like to your point, I would take him on. As a Knicks fan, I would love Karis LeVert on my team, injuries included. There has to be a player out there for this. I believe they have the Sixers' 20th pick this year. That's a package. That's a real package to get you right. But like, what kind of star are you? You're obviously shooting higher than Buddy Hield, who's making star money. But
I mean, right? Do you say, "Hey Sixers, give us Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons"?
Ooh, that's
and
too
we'll
high.
give you. I agree. I'm not suggesting this for anyone. I'm more saying from the Nets' point of view. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to chase a top 20 player, and your package is the Sixers' own pick, just for the sake of argument, top 20 in the draft, maybe another future asset, Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie, doesn't quite get the job done for a superstar.
I know. You're looking at the CJ McConnells of the world. I don't even want to mention what team he plays for because we need to stay focused and not fall asleep.
CJ McConnell.
McCollum. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of TJ McConnell.
TJ McCollum.
JT McDonald.
They're all the same. But I was only using the Sixers dudes as a thought exercise. Like, does LeVert and Dinwiddie
get you an
and
all-star?
A pick and Kurucs or whoever get you an all-star? I don't know.
I don't know either. And even with that 20th pick.
Unless that guy is Tobias Harris that you're intrigued by.
Oh, you do that in a hot
if you want,
second.
You want Tobias
Yes.
Harris. Oh, let's go.
Is that something that would help the Nets? Clearly, it would help the Sixers. But do you, as a front office,
No,
Sean Marks is
because
too smart.
He's too smart, but also Tobias Harris's best case is like a very poor man's KD. Like
That's very good,
like,
though.
But it's a poor man's version. I'm saying.
But I'm saying it's poor. No. The poor version.
But it's that position. 3-4.
It's that skill set too.
He can shoot from various places. He can, he can score relatively efficiently from everywhere. You give him the ball, he's an ISO dude. A poor version is what I'm saying. A poverty-stricken.
Can I just spitball some names? Like, does Devin Booker make a difference here?
Suns would never do it, though.
Yeah, I know. But does a player like Devin Booker do it? Does a player like Officer Mitchell do it? Like, let's say these fringe all-stars are available.
But that's the problem, right? Is that those young fringe all-stars aren't available.
No, I wouldn't trade either of those guys if I were their teams.
Because we've seen such a amalgamation of superstars in various markets. Like, the Clippers aren't giving you one of theirs. The Lakers aren't giving you one of theirs. Boston already has two. The Sixers probably aren't dumb enough to give you one of theirs. I mean, I'm not going to jinx anything. I'm just saying probably. Not going to say any affirmative thing here. Mm-hmm. But, the constellations of true superstars in the league aren't being broken up.
No. I'm looking at the All-Star rosters. None of these guys are worth that package, and none of these teams would trade them.
Right. So I don't know what you're talking about if you're the Nets and you're like, we're looking for a star. It's like, everyone's like, yo, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want stars as well. What's up?
And not to be weird, but isn't Dinwiddie kind of what you're looking for? I mean, he was talked about in the All-Star voting. He only makes $11 million. Like, are you looking to unload him for like a slight tier above?
Well, what are we even looking for? If you're that team, unless DeAndre is going out, which it seems like he's not, I don't know. You're looking for a wing.
I would say a wing.
You're looking for potentially a better center
than Jared Allen. Jeez,
that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't.
He's
know.
Good enough, right?
Or DeAndre's good enough. Whatever.
Yeah, the two of them are fine. Unless you can seriously upgrade there, but no one's trading Jokic or Rudy Gobert, one half of Flu Lives Matters. No one's trading.
What about Beal? Could you package Dinwiddie and LeVert and picks and some other stuff for Beal? That might be able to work because he can play the two. Kyrie's at the one.
I like
KD
that.
goes 3 or 4. DeAndre still plays, center or Jared Allen. And Washington gets to kind of continue their rebuild with a bunch of parts. Maybe.
I like that. Shouldn't all these teams just try to get Danilo Gallinari? Just like clear space and just try to sign. Isn't he the guy to get? Because he's not going to cost as much as Beal. Beal's contract is wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think the Nets are on the right track and they have the right idea, which is to add a third star because they're already at like 145 over the cap. They were building to do this.
Yes.
Like this was the goal, was to go way over the cap and then still have the maneuverability to use some solid young players on good contracts to add another talented player.
Would Kevin Love work?
Kind of like that.
He's not bad.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
DeAndre, Kevin Love, it means you're going to play Durant at the 3, or you could put Love at the 5. I don't mind it though.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
You need a guy who can space the floor, a good passer, and is not like really selfish if you're going to be playing with Durant and Kyrie. Mm-hmm. It's kind of just remaking the Cavs. Like it's like
Poor
LeBron is
Love,
Durant, and Kyrie, and Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson is now either one of the net centers.
Kevin Love is perpetually holding the bag. I can't even prove that, but it always feels like he is, right? He's always angry about something, and I'm like, oh, he has a reason to be angry. This is very frustrating.
Kevin Love does seem like one of the good guys, though.
I like him.
Same.
Yeah, I think we've forgotten about how good he is.
It would be a bummer if he spends the rest of his career in the obscurity of Cleveland after he was the last guy to join. It's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. Let's do it. We got a chip. And everyone's like, we're out.
I'm in the D-Nice chat room. Oh, everyone's like, oh, there's Zuckerberg.
Did Ellen just log off?
So all of a sudden I'm playing with a bunch of prom kings. I Love is out, right? You have to think Love is not going to be in Cleveland this season. He's valuable, and you're right. He's well loved, no pun intended. And they can't really use him in Cleveland
Unless they're going to build around him and Drummond.
Oh my God, Drummond! I forgot Cleveland it's tough for me, man. But I should bone up on my Cleveland roster.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's end this podcast and then bone up on the prom kings of Cleveland and come back strong with an all Cleveland cookies episode. Fully boned up.
I like this. I want to talk about Larry Nance Jr.
Cookies!